Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everyone, welcome. Surah Yusuf, chapter 12, verses 105 to 111. And 111 is the last verse of this chapter. And these are the references and our contact, that is Idaratul Islam's contact. End of Surah Yusuf, an overview so far. Surah Yusuf provides us with the procedure to value our own self, which after acquiring Iman and keeping on performing solid deeds can achieve those heights where Allah's help does become available, even if no one else around is willing to listen to the Quran. So the point which we have learned from Surah Yusuf is that even one man's efforts cannot go wasted in the account of Allah. Next is we also come across human frailties and vulnerabilities at a fundamental level which hinder its thinking from looking at the wider issues of life. For example, the purpose of human existence, the existence of a self within man, the significance of death as a deadline, the need for a life free from fear and huzn, the issues of unbridled human intellect, desires, and emotions. I put down some of these points just as a reminder. It points to many facts of human existence which go unnoticed by most human beings, primarily because no mechanism exists to draw their attention to these by those who are mu'mineen and muhsineen. So we have learned that it is important to draw people's attention. And if they don't pay any attention to that, that should not worry us. Our job is to pass on the information. And this is what Hazrat Yusuf did as he lived his life. And same was done by his father, Hazrat Yaqub, that he passed on the message of Wahi to everyone. Yusuf manifested this aspect in the prison, and later when he confronted his brothers and told them of their errors of judgment, despite having a father possessing the light of Wahi. So he did point out to them that your path has been wrong. And the path has been wrong, and it is based on evidence, and that is why you have suffered. We need to see the significance of this surah in the overall context of human guidance presented by the Quran and refer to its finer aspects when facing events in our life within our family setup, within the society in which we live, and within the nation state and world as a broader community of people. So what we need to see is that what is in this surah for us, in the conduct and character of Hazrat Yusuf, and what happened to him and how he dealt with it, they are great signs for us. So that is the learning point for us, that wherever we are, we should try to follow it and keep it in mind. And we have gone through very fine details of his character and what is noted in the surah. If we are able to develop this side of our potential, then we have literally enhanced our vision as part of the expansion of our bir, which is the vastness of our consciousness as noted in 2:177. And we know bir means that is how much we can expand our consciousness through our own thinking, through our own efforts. We will refer to these aspects covered in this surah in our further study of the Quran in future talks. Next is, most human beings do not reflect in the signs of Allah. So we come to the first verse of today. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّنْ آيَاتٍ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَمُرُّونَ عَلَيْهَا وَهُمْ عَنْهَا مُورِدُونَ. The teaching of the Quran is in any event an ideological invitation which is presented before them in the form of alphabets and words, whereas their state is such that, so the Quran over here says and draws our attention is, how many visible great evidences are there of the working of the laws of Allah in the universe, from which they turn their faces away and do not make use of their intellectual reason. And the next one is, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. Among them, there are some who totally deny the laws of Allah, and most are those who, though they accept the laws of Allah, together with this, they also accept other forces as possessors of authority and rule. And in this way, despite being called mu'mineen, remain as mushrik. So in the first one, Quran has drawn our attention that once we are on this path, and we claim to be on this path, if we look around, there are numerous signs around us which draw our attention that there should be some purpose of our existence. And the second one is, and if we ignore it, moridun, then of course we suffer. And in the second one, we will go through slightly more details. We had a presentation on shirk as well. So over here, Quran says that we should be very, very careful that even despite having Iman, some people do mix up and associate others with Allah. And associating others with Allah means that we accept Quran as the book of laws, as a code of life, and still we mix up man-made things in that. And as a result, we become mushrik, which means we do not get the benefits of the Quran. Now, why do most humans not pay attention? So I put down some points here. First is we need to relate this aspect to our capacity to bring change within our own self. We do not reach any positive aim in life overnight. So nobody can reach a very highly eminent character overnight. We have to go through the life over years and years of efforts. Human intellect takes time to go against the majority, and particularly the kind of a world we have around us, we have to even make more effort, i.e. the world created by relative human values. Verse 12, 105 points to this aspect that despite observing all the signs in the outer world, human beings do not find enough motivation, even those who have the means. So even those who have read the books and have acquired very high qualifications, even they don't find the motivation to go beyond the physical world around them. They are not willing to think about it, that is there a higher purpose to our life? To go beyond the physical world to question the purpose of their own creation. Next one is, as reflective students of the Quran, we need to come to grips with this aspect as it helps us to understand our own psyche as well as the psyche of fellow human beings. It is important to know precisely what motivates us to stay on this path. So we at least know that what is motivating us to stay on this path and to come to the Quran and discuss these value system which the Quran presents us. So from that, then we can compare it with others' behavior to whom we give message and what prevents them from coming to this path. So the difference between the two will be the areas where we have to put a lot of efforts to understand it. Human psyche is quite difficult to understand at times because we do not expect that people can behave the way they behave. And if we think that they will behave the way we behave, that is those who have come to the Quran, then we get the shock of our life because they do not. The Quran provides answers and explanations to both questions. So there is a lot of work here, and that is what Hazrat Yusuf did. That while he was going through this milieu, these challenges of his life, he was also keeping an eye on everything around him. The only self which we can bring in line with the Quranic path is our own individual self. We by now know it, that we cannot change anyone because they all have their own choices. And that is why Quran says that if Allah wanted, he could have changed everyone. And everyone would have just followed the guidance because then they would have become animals. And we can check our self-development level by using the Quranic value system. And this value system consists of two things: permanent values and divine attributes. Divine attributes are the ones which we manifest ourselves by acquiring those within our character and conduct. And then within the permanent values, we work. Those who acquire a Quranic self through Iman and Saleh deeds have to come together. Now this is important. We have gone over it again. We have gone over it previously as well, and it's good to remind ourselves continuously. This is a major sign of our self-development at a higher level. The last one is the Quranic path being an eternal path. So we should always keep it in mind that Quranic path on which we are claiming to be, it's an eternal path. It's not going to end with our death. It's going to go beyond that. So that is the way we assure our inner self. Those looking for quick gains can never be motivated to come to this path. And this is a human problem. Those are looking for quick gratification in their life. They want quick results. They are not going to come to the Quran because Quranic path is the path of steadfastness and patience. We need a lot of patience. That is why Quran says, do sabr. The longer a person has treaded on the wrong path of life and never questions its veracity, the more difficult for him or her to come to the guidance of the Quran. I put down this comment through my own observation as well, that if people who are doing wrong, despite the fact that they can avoid doing wrong, if they're well off in a capitalist system and they are beneficiaries of the man-made system, then they don't need to do a lot of wrong. But if they are still doing wrong, it's very difficult for them to come to the Quran. They will never find much attraction in the Quranic message. Next is looking at shirk in more detail. Now, over here, I've quoted few verses which I thought will elaborate few aspects of shirk. First is وَكَيْفَ أَخَافُ وَأَشْرَكْتُمْ وَلَا تَخَافُونَ أَنَّكُمْ أَشْرَكْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ عَلَيْكُمْ سُلْطَانًا فَأَيُّ الْفَرِيقَيْنِ أَحَقُّ بِالْأَمْنِ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Why should I be fearful of those idols, false gods, who have no authority and control? So essentially, Quran is asking us to tell those who are following these false idols that why should I do that? So that means that my own self-control, my own discipline, my own iman is very firm, and I have recognized that these false gods do not have authority and control. You are the one who should be fearful, who associates others with an omnipotent being like Allah, even though Allah has not said anywhere to you that these are in truth sharing in my authority. So this is important, that we should be very clear that why Allah is asking us to have iman in Allah the way it is explained in the Quran, because then our psyche keeps changing. It becomes very firm, very steadfast, very focused. If you understand this, then tell me who is more deserving of peace and security and who should be quaking with fear, you or me? Fear is an essential consequence of shirk. Now, this is important for us, that fear is an essential consequence of shirk. And that is why we have fear in the world in which we live. Through Tawheed, such a force becomes created in the human heart that he is not fearful of anyone in the world. The next verse is Allazina amanu walam yalbisu imanahum bizulmin ulaika lahumul amnu wahum muhtadun. In light of these realities, where is the room for doubt that peace and security are only for those who maintain conviction in the truth of the law of Allah and do not go against it in practical terms? Because for peace and fearlessness, iman and salih deeds is a fundamental condition. So over here, Quran has pointed to a very important aspect, that once we have iman and we keep doing salih deeds, those develop a sort of conviction within us, and the way our life changes and the way we benefit from that, then that will indicate to us that our path is the right one. These are the people who will be treading on the straight path. Now, shirk prevents us from getting the best from our life. So this is important because Quran gives us a formula, a recipe for success in this life, and this success is connected to the life in the hereafter. So if we mix it up with anything other than the Quran with it, then we do not get benefit from the formula. We can never acquire Allah's help if our consciousness is stained. Such a consciousness can never understand the Quran of Allah. And we should try to see those people as well who do not come to the pure Quran, that their minds are never ever sure of the guidance of Allah. They never have that firmness, that steadfastness. They get distracted very easily in their life. So this is an important point for us, and this point will be covered later on once we talk of human potentials. Now, I have drawn a schematic over here to clearly define paths by the Quran for life. And the first one is path of Kufa, which Quran calls it as Hizb Shaitan. And then life ends with death. That is the assumption on which this path goes. And it has no self-concept, it has fear and grief. Because there is no self-concept, because they think that the life will end with death, there is nothing within human beings which can go forward. Whereas a consciousness has the ability to survive a physical death. And they will always have fear and grief, because that is the kind of world human mind creates without the guidance of the Quran. Next is Pharaoh rules the world, and Quran points to that. It is a man-made world and slavery exists. All types of slavery exist. If we think that the slavery has disappeared, it hasn't. The forms have changed. And now there is a lot of psychological slavery as well, which is controlled through media. Declines with time, chaos, fear, and grief are signs. So such a system, any system of kufr will decline, and then another system will take its place. Now over here, I have compared it with shirk and I put it at a lower order because it is at a lower order than kufr. Because kufr is straight away denial, saying that I do not accept any guidance from Allah and my life will end with death because my brain dies, so I die. But in shirk, people are confused. They are mixing it up. Path of shirk, contradiction in words and deeds, cognitive dissonance. Such a system in which shirk exists, they suffer from a horrendous amount of cognitive dissonance. They are never sure that what exactly they are doing with their life. Because under kufr, at least they know that their life will end with death. They make maximum use of this word and its resources. Next is subjects of kuffar as have low cognitive potentials. And it is obvious, if a human being is not very sure where he is going in his life, then he is going to be less productive as compared to the one whose aim is very clear. And we see it all around us. The world where religions exist, those are the words of shirk. False beliefs, hindrance in the path of Allah, low intellect and highly charged emotions. Because they live at a very low level of their emotive development and over their passions are very high, rational thinking is not as developed. And they clearly see as well that the system which is, for example, a secular system or a system which thinks that the life will end with death and is based on that, they always are far more developed than the system in which shirk exists. Now, compared with that, the path of the Quran is a path of elevation and path of vastness, and it is selected through choice. These two are the ones which are the basic human default positions, whereas the Quranic path, we have to be absolutely clear that which path we wish to follow. And it is clearly signposted by the Quran. So the point over here, we have gone through it before as well, that we should go back to the Quran and check it. It is an external criteria presented by the Quran which verifies about the system or the path which we are following. Quran does not leave things to doubts and suspicions. And Quran says over here, I have included this verse, La tarkabunna tabakan an tabakin, that if you are in this path, then you shall surely travel from stage to stage. Now, Iman is about acquiring conviction based on concrete evidence. Now, next verse of Surah Yusuf is فَآمِنُوا أَن تَأْتِيَهُمْ غَاشِيَةٌ مِّنْ عَذَابِ اللَّهِ أَوْ تَأْتِيَهُمُ السَّاعَةُ بَغْتَةً وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Have these people become fully satisfied that among the destructions to come according to Allah's law of requital, such a destruction will not come to them which can encompass them from all directions, or that impending revolution may arrive suddenly in such a manner that they have no inkling of its coming. So Quran over here is admonishing human beings who are not coming to this path that things will go bad with passage of time. So don't think that your deeds will not materialize, will not manifest in the later part of your life. And La Yasharun sums it up that you should look at it at your full consciousness level. Don't leave it to some kind of a doubt and suspicion and conjecture. Next verse is Qul hazihi sabili ad'u ilallahi ala basiratin ana wa man ittabani wa subhanallahi wa ma ana minal mushrikeen. Say to them that my path is clear and straight and that I invite you to Allah according to reason and evidence. Very important. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his time was saying this to people around him, and we say it to people around us. Witnessing this with my own eyes. I myself do this, and those who will be my followers will also do the same. Allah is far above this, that He may also be in need of any other forces to operate the universe. Therefore, I am not one of those who accepts the law of Allah, and together with this also views other powers to be masters of authority and sovereignty. And in this way, despite being called mu'min, remain as a mushrik. So we have seen that one can become mushrik in case one is not fully clear about the path of the Quran. And obviously, we have to be together to discuss it, so that if one makes a mistake, that somebody else can guide them, can provide that advice. Because it's a serious path. And over here, Quran says that, because Rasulullah himself says, Allah basiratin ana wa man ittabani, that those who follow me, who see me as a model, they also follow the same path. as I follow it. So this is a path of togetherness. It is a path of a Jamaat. It is not an individual path. Of course, we come to the Quran individually and then we come together and build it up. And over here, the Quran very emphatically again says, Min al-Mushrikeen, that I am not one of those who will ever mix it up, because one cannot mix it up. If one is very clear about the guidance of Allah and is one benefiting as well, and the conviction is absolutely 100%, then there is no question of doing shirk. Some salient points of interest here. First is, as we are fully aware and conscious of the fact that the law of requital does not spare anyone, whether individual or collective, and our deeds immediately begin to produce their visible and some not visible effects. And at some point in the future, these come together and suddenly and unexpectedly appear in a tangible form. At that time, it is too late to do anything about it. On the way, however, warning signs do appear, which most people ignore and press on with their wrongdoings, thinking that they are getting away with this. So over here, there is a great instruction for us that we should be fully aware what is going on within our own life and what is going on around us and what is going on in the wider world. And nowadays, we can get plenty of information about the wider world because it's an interconnected world. Here, the Quran has provided an important instruction for us, i.e., those who are on Sirat al-Mustaqim and keep a close watch on events around us in the world. This will help us to see the trend of events in the non-Quranic world. And while such a world is heading towards reaping what they are sowing in front of our very eyes and are not fully conscious of it, we gain strength from this evidence and accelerate our efforts towards the system of deen, which may get an opportunity to replace it. So it's important that we become very, very alive to what is going on around us. And it's a gradual process. Step by step, we do become more aware of the events taking place around us. Verse 12:108 needs to be read forward as well as in reverse order. In order to get maximum from our life, the Quran here points to a few basics. Firstly, stating that nothing in the Quran is not based on evidence. So if we do not find evidence when we are reading the Quran, that means we should look for evidence. Where we do not see the necessary evidence, we need to strive hard to get it. Because in that striving, in that making effort, ourself develops. And this effort will develop ourselves and make it eligible for further development, and this process never ever stops. It should only stop when we die. So that is the way we should look at our life, and that is the way we are looking at it. Secondly, it cautions us not to be distracted and to remain focused, and then reminds us that firm conviction must be achieved in this fact that Iman in Allah and His book needs to be free from any contamination. If the messengers of Allah, who are all human beings, could do this, then so can all of us. Next one is, the next verse is, the issue now is to make use of the Quranic guidance. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقُرَىٰ أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَلْيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ وَلَا دَارُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. And to this objection of theirs, that how can a human being be a messenger, say to them that even before me, Allah did not send any messenger except that he was a man, that is the Rijal, from among those who resided in that habitation, to whom we bestowed Wahi. Do these people who make such objections not travel through the earth and see what was the end of those before them who followed such a path? And this is our problem as well, that when we think that previously people did it and they managed to establish this system, we sometimes feel inadequate ourselves, that somehow we may not be able to do it. And when doubts come in our heart, suspicions come in our heart, and we are uncertain, then we should be rest assured that we will not be able to do it. So we should not let the doubts come in our hearts, and make our full efforts and work with those who are already on this path. Because through mutual consultation, by interaction, we strengthen each other. And this is what always Mu'mineen did in the past. Next is, if these people had used their intellect or reasoning, opened their eyes and studied the historical evidence, then this fact would have become apparent to them that in the tussle between haq and batil, ultimately success and authority was achieved only by those who, saving themselves from destructive effects, lived their life according to the laws of Allah. So Quran over here motivates us as well and continuously draws our attention that look around in the world. This world is not going to stay the way it is now. It is changing according to the law of requital. If some total of people in the world are doing wrong, then it will decline. And if we, those who claim to be on Sirat al-Mustaqim or path of the Quran, if we make an effort, then we can reverse this trend. At least make an effort at some part of the world. And for that, making that effort, of course, individuals are extremely important. And Surah Yusuf gives us that encouragement, provides that evidence that individuals are extremely important because it is individuals who come together and create a Jamaat. Therefore, say to them that the decision between haq and batil is not made by this, whether the messenger is a man like other men or a superhuman according to your perception. So he is just a human being like anyone else. Because otherwise this message is really useless, because if it is not for human beings and the messengers were angels or someone else, then there is no point in giving it to human beings. This decision is made by this, what is the outcome of living life in accordance with the law which he presents, and what are the consequences of going against it. The evidence for this can also be provided from historical accounts. Now over here, one important aspect of using the Quranic guidance from verse 109, I've gone into slightly more detail. We as humans with the ability of choice and intent have tremendous potentials which need to be made to emerge, and the Quran points to this fact that this Quran is meaningless if there are no human beings around. Since it is for mankind, hence one human being, that is one man, has to be sent to communicate Wahi to others. So this is the point we should keep it in mind, that Wahi had to come through some human being. And that human being was Nabi and Allah's Rasool. And once he has given that message in itself becomes extremely important, because he is going to leave this world at some point in time. The issue here for us is not who brought it, but what we are going to do with this guidance before we are ready to leave this life, i.e. before our death. So that is the focus of our attention, that what is in it for us as of today? How can we get benefit out of it? Are we willing to continue to live in a man-made system indefinitely, or we would like to change it? Then our attention is drawn to the historical signs of past nations who have left behind their marks, and the Quran invites us to ponder deeply on this. Once upon a time, they all existed. So we should keep it in mind, all these human beings who existed for thousands of years, they all have gone. And so we are going to be gone as well. For example, if we think of, let's say, another 50 years, so many of us will not be around. And then they all disappear. The same is going to happen to us, that we all are going to die. So living this physical life as if it will never end, and thus failing to bring out the best in our potentials during this life, is not a wise decision. So this is something which I always keep it in mind, that I'm not going to be around forever. And I availed all the opportunities, even the man-made system which is provided to us. Have I brought the best out of myself or not? So that is something which we have to all the time think about. None of us is going to come back, period. Hence, we need to pay attention to the Book of Allah to get the best here and then be part of the best in the next life, which essentially starts here when we come to the straight path defined by the Quran. Now, next one is towards the end, the verse sums up its findings in two terms. And it says, وَالْدَارُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. So Quran says, become muttaqi through iman and salih deeds. We know muttaqi is the one who is following Allah's path and avoids all kinds of dangers by remaining within the limits defined by the Quran and within its values. And then by coming together, and it's a plural form here, see, خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ. So it's not a one man's path. It has to end up in coming together. Witness how our intellect will be able to see things on a very wide spectrum which others can never witness. Evidence-based journey of life from here to the hereafter. So wherever we see things vague, we should make an effort to find out the true reality of things around us. So that is important for us. It's a path where we have to continuously reflect and think. We have to continuously think and never give up thinking except when we are sleeping. So we should go to sleep thinking and get up early in the morning thinking. acquiring intellectual acumen to understand the functioning of the law of requital. Now, next verse is hatta izas tayasa Rasool wa zannu annahum qad uzidu jahum nasruna fa najji man nasha'u wala yuraddu basuna anil qawmil mujrimin. Very interesting verse, but these historical evidences will also inform us that the outcome of this struggle between Haqq and Batil is not settled quickly just like that. For this a long time is required. Thus, sometimes in the case of previous nations, this time of respite would be so long that the messengers used to become disheartened that these people will now not accept Iman. It's important here that these things we do face, that when people do not listen to the message, we think that why are they listening? These things are so obvious to me, but they can't see it. But over here, Quran is explaining to us that such situations will arise, and these did arise in previous times as well. And what we should keep it in mind is that we are dealing with Allah and Allah's guidance. And we should stick to that rather than seeing that these people are not coming to this message. It is their own loss. And if we know that it is truth, then for us, there is no reason to move away from it. And people would think in their hearts that the punishment of ruin and devastation about which they were being warned was an empty threat. And people do think, because there is a long time of respite in the law of requital. So people think that they cannot be punished. These guys are just telling us the stories of the ancient. And I've come across these kind of people. I'm sure all of us have come across these kind of comments as well. Then at that juncture, our school would reach our messengers. So we used to keep the messenger and his Jamaat protected from the destruction according to our law of Mashiach, and that punishment would never divert from the criminals. Hence, just as it occurred in the case of former nations, so the same will happen to these people. So what we need to keep it in mind is that jurum, the criminality, does not go unabated for long. And particularly when people stand up against it, they stand up against bullies, then they matter. And bullies also realize it that now people have stood up and they also retreat. So best defense against that is that more we should stick to the Sirat al-Mustaqim of the Quran and do our best. Next one is verse 12, 110 points to few important issues related to human thought process. First is Haqq and Batil are two diametrically opposite entities, and we need to clearly differentiate between the two and stay within the domain of Haqq. If the lines between the two are fuzzy in our mind, we need to make efforts to remove this fuzziness. If this does not take place, then the Quranic guidance will not benefit us. This is something which is very important for us, that between Haqq and Batil, the Quran has put a very clearly discerning lines. There is no confusion in that. The confusion our mind creates when we are not sure, when we come to the concept of Allah given in the Quran, but at the same time we have a fear of man-made forces around us, and we think that how the system is going to change. That is not our problem. Our challenge is to come to the Quran the way Quran tells us to come to it, and that is why we need to discuss it as well, because the psychological issue, the whole thing is very much about human psyche, because that is where we make decisions. Here the Quran has guided us that when we pass on the message and come together as a Jamaat, then results take time to materialize. Because once we have made the decision to come to this path, then the results have started building up, though they are invisible, because we are sending them forward, and we will meet them at some point in time. Because the Quran says, what you send forward with your hands, you are going to meet it at some point in time later on. The law of respite functions at a slow pace. During this period, thoughts will come to us that these people around us do not respond to this message of Allah. So this will come to us, and we might get a bit discouraged as well. But we have to strengthen us by going back to the Quran again and going back to other mu'mineen and discuss with them, which is so obvious to us but not to them. However, the Quran tells us emphatically that when Yusuf was in the prison, he clearly knew that his path is right and that his deeds will never go wasted. Yaqub also knew that the path of Iman and solid deeds will lead to success. So there is a great strength, in great message for us and guidance for us in this surah, that one person single-handedly goes through all the difficulties of life, all the troubles of life created by other human beings, and never ever thinks of giving up. People around us with weak selves will try to weaken our resolve by engaging in frustrated talk and through distractions. We don't need to condemn them. We don't need to dislike them. We don't get upset with that. If we are forewarned, then we know what is coming. And this is the path which it's not an easy path. People will distract you and say, no, this is not going to happen. Can you see how strong the Pharaoh system is? But once we go to the Quran, then the Quran gives us a strong message that you are working with Allah. You're not working alone. And His book, the values He's given us, will strengthen our inner self. But we must not pay any heed to this, rather expect this to occur. So we should be actually prepared for that, because Quran does mention it. And this is what the Quran is pointing to for our guidance. Last one is, then the Quran sums it up factually that those who are criminals, that is mujrimeen, get closer and closer to the consequences of the deeds which they have sent forward. So we should keep it in mind that while this wrong system is heading towards its own ruin and decline, we are on a path of ascendancy. We are rising. The consciousness of our mind is expanding with the passage of time. And we know it as well, because the things which we could see previously, will be able to see them. And we have seen it through our presentations, how much knowledge we have gained. They also get closer to their target, i.e. deen. Both are invisible paths of life, but are visible to those who use the Quranic lens. Now, what I've done over here is, if you remember in one of our previous discussions, two words came up, al-qasas and amba. And what I've done is, very briefly, I've looked at their roots, and then we will look at those two verses. The first one is qasas, and its root is given here: to follow in the footsteps of someone. Basic meaning is to follow and struggle. Told him the news, that is telling someone about some kind of information, made him aware of it. News, matter, event. Because Quran is saying that this, what we are telling you about, for example, at the beginning of Surah Yusuf, that we are telling you is not a story. There is a lot more into it for your guidance. Al-Qasas, to follow a criminal as well. So there is, it is related to following some path as well, and following and pursuing someone who has done wrong, or for a law to pursue criminals. For more details, see Lughatul Quran. And the second one is the root is given over here, and it is with the MBA and W as well. So we can look at both roots. Basic meaning is to come to one place from another. So it is a sort of information, to give the news as it travels from one place to another. So once we follow a certain path, and the results of that then become a sort of news for us later on. Raghav says it is not any news, but that which is beneficial and which is knowledgeable. So it is a useful information. It is something which we get after following a certain path, after going through a certain kind of procedure, processes, and under some value system, or at least which makes the listener aware. So that is very important as well, that when these words are used, we should look at it, that in what context these are appearing before us. So there is a difference between the two. Now, Surah Yusuf concludes itself by announcing glad tidings for Mu'mineen. Over here, this is the last verse. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. See word again, قَصَصِهِمْ used over here, because there is an instruction in it for us. مَا كَانَ حَدِيثًا يُفْتَرَى وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَتَفْصِيلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةً لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Absolutely brilliant, a great motivation for us. In the circumstances and conditions which we narrate of nations from the past, there are signs of understanding and wisdom for those people who make use of their intellect and reasoning. From this, it will become proven that the Quran is not some self-concocted book. This will show all those claims to be true which were made before this through previous Anbiya. So Quran over here is saying, Ibratul Albab, that through these stories, the breadth and of your consciousness will increase. You will understand that what is the purpose of this Quran and what it is going to do in case you follow it. And then it ends up with yuminun. Next is all those principles and laws have been given in it which were needed by mankind to live a true life. These principles and laws are described in such a clear and explicit way so that no kind of ambiguity remains in this. This is that code which will serve as guidance in the journey of life for every one of those nations which holds conviction in its truth and will provide the means of nourishment for it. So it's a great way to motivate mu'mineen that Allah is on their side and it provides guidance and also rahmat. And we know from rahmat the root is for nourishment, development, and everything comes into it. And we'll look into some of the aspects here. Reflection of verse 1211, conclusion of the surah. First one is Quran keeps drawing our attention to the purpose of our creation and informs us not to sit back and relax on the existing state of our intellect's awareness of the world in which we live. So the point over here is for us that we should not sit idle. When we have time, we should make an effort and see what else we can do, what else we can read, what else we can discuss. Just see the word used here is ibratul albab, that these people who are thinking, who are keeping a very close eye on the problems humanity is facing, they see the signs, and from those signs they keep seeing which way the humanity is progressing, and they also see that if Mu'mineen or Jamaat has been created, which way it is going. It means to be acutely aware of everything going on around us and its impact on our own selves, and then checking it against the criteria given in the Quran. Next is, since Wahi is that knowledge which human intellect cannot access through its own efforts, because it is external. If human intellect could find what is given in the Quran, then there was no need for the Quran. They would have figured it out themselves. And since they cannot, and we know we cannot, then we have to pay more attention to it. Then after obtaining some knowledge through the use of human intellect to live this life, the Quran invites us to create a desire within ourselves towards this question. What else is there in the purpose of our creation? By stating that, وَتَفْصِيلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, the Quran has really beautifully summed it up that you will get whatever your questions are, you will get the answers for that, and that will increase our conviction. All is explained if we use our intellect as guided by Allah. The concluding part of the verse sums up a great deal for our intellect to come to grips with by stating وَهُدًى وَرَحْمَةٌ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. And this has come in other verses as well, and we have shared these previously as well, and more will come as we go through the Quran. The points covered are seek guidance to acquire Iman, and this Iman should lead to acquiring Rahmat, and then become part of those who are also Mu'mineen, and then never give up until the time comes to leave this life. On the way, there is a strong possibility that the system of Deen may shape up. If not, then this will lay down the foundations of Deen, and a new life will emerge for all to witness, and this is based on evidence. Now, two different aspects of the account of Yusuf, and if you remember, we talked about Al-Qasas and Amba. So over here, I've quoted two verses. First, this verse 3rd appeared in Surah Yusuf, which we have gone through previously. Nahanu nakussu alayka asan al-qasasi wa bima awhayna ilayka hazal Qur'ana wa in kunta min qablihi la minal ghafilin. O Rasool, by revealing this Quran on you through Wahi, we narrate the accounts of previous Anbiya and past nations through you in the best way. These are those accounts of which you were not aware before the revelation of the Quran. In these is also the account of Yusuf, which is narrated now. We have gone through this Surah Yusuf now, and we know that how much was there which we are able to explore further in the light of the world in which we live. So there is a lot into it, and I'm sure as the time will pass, people will look into it and they will find more refined points which are covered in the surah. Next one is Zalika min amba'il ghaibi nuhihi ilayka wa ma kunta ladihim is ajma'u amrahum wa hum yamkurun. See, from 12:3 to 12:102, same qasas becomes amba now. O Rasool, these are those historical accounts which are not within your knowledge and which we have revealed to you via Wahi. So now all that account has been revealed to Rasulullah. It has been revealed to us that how did Yusuf as an individual, went from a very difficult upbringing and then got established in the land because he was among Muhsinin and Salihin and Mu'minin and Muttaqi. You were not standing next to the brothers of Yusuf when they had agreed on their conspiracy and were engaged in secret plotting against Yusuf. See how beautifully the Quran over here has added this, that remember what we are telling you is not a story. It is about human psyche, how they were thinking. And that is where there is a great lesson for us, that when we are reading the Quran, we should look into it, that how it is going to affect my psyche. And then when the change in our psyche comes, we should go back to the Quran and verify it. Therefore, how could you know these events? Next is the cognitive aspects of the story of Yusuf for us. First one is the Quran puts great emphasis on individual human beings as a society being the sum total of individuals. However, it also recognizes the challenges of life faced by individuals in a non-Quranic world. The Quran recognizes these things. That is why there are examples given in the Quran that so-and-so did this and this is how they succeeded. So-and-so did bad and this is how they suffered. This is why it invites those who are in a better position within this human setup to come forward and through our own choice to take on the responsibility of becoming Mu'mineen, Muttaqi and Muhsinin. For this, the Quran provides complete teaching, training and the process. Allama Pervez has laid down this work in detail in his various books at a fundamental level. Next one is the Quran has recognized the steepness of this path. I've given a verse here of Haqq, but assured those who wish to tread on it that Allah's help will be available to them. Then it explains the process of how to start getting this help and signposts it so that we do not go astray. Surah Yusuf has explained many aspects of this process, and Yusuf is presented as an individual who managed to do this. Hence, there is a need for us to acquire understanding of it, as this account served as a model for Rasulullah and his companions. This model is available for the whole of mankind until the last day. So these are the points which I thought we should, again, maybe some of these are repetitions, but it's good to repeat and go over it so that we keep reminding ourselves. In verse 12:7, the Quran had pointed to us that at the start of the surah that there are signs for those who question different aspects of human life. The account of Yusuf and his brothers. We have managed to look at many of those signs and have made these part of our memory while going through this surah. I'm sure there will be more questions by those who will be coming after us and in future, because as the world will change, so the questions, the nature of questions could change as well. But we have gone through the fundamentals which are very important, and we have looked at very finer aspects of human psyche, which was working through this surah, and to which the Quran has pointed our attention. And now we will look at some latent human potentials highlighted in Surah Yusuf. I thought through it and I said that, wait a minute, let us look at it, that how can we look at some of the aspects and look at the potentials which we have, and how do we benefit with that. The first one is define a clear aim and intermediate measurable objectives in life and signpost these with the help of the permanent values. For example, firm resolve to stay on Sirat al-Mustaqim and relate events of life to the Quranic values. A life without an aim, without a clear objective, is a meaningless life. So the Quran, what it does is that right at the beginning, it gives us help to define a clear aim. That is why it says Sirat al-Mustaqim, a straight path, a balanced path, well-established path, about which you will never be in doubt if you make an effort to know about it and then tread on it. So it is important that our aim must be very clear. What do we want from life? Of course, we want successes in this life as well. We want to have a better living. We want to have a better family. We want to have a better environment. But Quran says that do not be totally lost into it. Do not make these as your aim and focus of this life. Your life is going to go, the life of yourself is going to go beyond that. So over here, it is important that we look at that our overall aim in the light of the Quran, i.e. to follow the Quran and remain on Sirat al-Mustaqim and stay together with those who also have a similar aim. And then it says have intermediate measurable objectives in life as well. Never, we shouldn't have vague objectives in life. For example, if somebody wants to achieve certain educational level, then it should be very clear. If one wants to have some kind of a security, then one should be very clear about it. If one wants to have some kind of a wealth, then one should be very clear about it. If one wants to have some kind of a Next one is acquire Iman and keep checking it as signposted in the Quran. I've given these two verses here. Next is never be distracted from our aim. Once we have defined it from the Quran and we have acquired Iman, then never ever think of giving up. It is important to stay united as we reinforce our strengths from each other, as noted in Surah Asr. For example, Surah Asr says, Amanu wa amilu salihati, and then watawasaw bil haqqi watawasaw bis sabr, that you have to mutually work through it. That is what is haqq, stay on that, and then persevere on that. So these are the potentials which are within every human being, but these have to be brought out so that we understand these things. Acquire the ability to recognize human fundamental frailties. Very important. We should develop that potential where we understand our own frailties, our own weaknesses at a fundamental level, our own emotive makeup, our own weaknesses as well. For example, if we lose temper at some point, we should immediately look into it, that why did I lose temper? If I become rude or impulsive at some point, I should look into it, why did I do it? And then guard against it. Then think about it and improve yourself and keep reminding yourself. And for example, prejudices, jealousies, envies, backbiting, temptations, short-term gratifications, self-justifications towards doing wrongs. So the list is very long. But the whole point is that we should be very, very careful in our life and very vigilant once we have come onto this path. Do solid deeds on a continuous basis to understand human issues in detail. So these solid deeds, of course, we help others as well, and we do our best, but these solid deeds should also be used to know the world in which we live, to know the problems in which we live, so that we become more conscious of it. That acquiring that higher consciousness is developing our potential. Because if we do not do it, then we are literally keeping our potential at a very low threshold level. Develop ability and consciousness to become highly conscious of this and keep the deadline of death in mind. So part of potential development is to keep death in mind. That I have got finite time in this world and I'm going to leave it. Am I making the best out of the time left for me before I am going to leave this life? While living in the man-made system and despite being the beneficiary of this system, rejected from the core of our heart. In fact, this rejection is part of acquiring Quranic Iman. Next one is when making commitments, think through it in detail and then carry it through. If we do not live up to our commitments, if we do not, for example, if I don't remember time of my commitment, then essentially my potential which deals with making commitments is weak. So I should strengthen that commitment. For example, if I keep forgetting, then I must put it on as an alarm or put it somewhere on a board. Tell someone that please remind me. But it is important that we should take our commitment seriously. It doesn't matter how small it is or how big it is. If we can't carry out smaller commitments, we will never be able to carry out major commitments. Never be sidetracked by distractions and unbridled desires. And in relation to commitments, if we cannot fulfill it, don't make it. Be very firm. So this is also part of our potentials and their development. The more strengthened this potential of fulfilling commitment becomes, the stronger self keeps appearing. Next, the second part is some latent potentials highlighted in Surah. And these are some which I have thought about, and I'm sure we can think of more in Surah Yusuf. Acquire the ability to say a big no when something appears which does not meet the Quranic values. This is very important. We should learn to say no, whether this is our family, children, friends, jobs, wider world, doesn't matter. We should have the ability to say no as well, that this does not meet the Quranic criteria. I'm not going to do it. Remain prepared that in a non-deen society, events do appear which require an immediate response. Being forewarned prepares us in advance. And this is an extremely strong potential we have. Human beings have tremendous potentials to say no. They compromise when they do not have that potential. If they haven't developed it, they will keep compromising all their life. The hereafter is a fact of life, and we need to convince ourselves about its existence through remaining aware of the functioning of the law of requital and by witnessing its working in both the individual and collective life. The world around us is the sum total of human past deeds. Develop the potential to see things in their overall perspective based on evidence. Never jump to quick emotive reactions. Listen, think, reflect in the light of the permanent values. take time, pause, and then form an opinion. So our opinions should be based on facts. This should not be based on somebody else's opinion. And we should consult if required. Because potential to be aware of our self-development will be affected if we take a wrong deed, we do a wrong deed, or we take a wrong act somewhere, then it is going to affect us. So that potential has to be developed to become more aware in our life. Acquire the potential to remain calm under difficult circumstances by assuring ourselves that I, and of course we as well, on the right path. Hence, not to react hastily. My life's aim will take me there where Allah wishes me to go. And stay calm. Being on this path means we cannot go wrong if we stay within its value system. Develop the habit to study the Quran and stay with those who are firmly on the path. For example, I've just put it down as Tolu Islam. Because Tolu Islam is the only platform in the world which represents pure Quran. The potential to acquire development of the self and then keep expanding its vision and outlook by using the intellectual prowess gained through the manifestation of divine attributes and the application of the permanent values. Never be content with the status quo. Keep recalling the finite time we have in this life, and there is so much to be achieved. Never underestimate own cognitive abilities. Multiply these by staying together. And finally, potential to understand the intrinsic link between responsibilities and rights. If we understand and willingly take over the responsibilities of Allah as enunciated in the Quran, then we will become entitled to the right of obtaining His help or His aid. It is that simple. So there is a very close relationship with the responsibilities and rights. If I do not carry out my responsibilities, then I do not have rights. I know a lot of people say, oh, this is my right. But first they have to carry out their responsibilities. Over here, Quran has made very clear that there are certain responsibilities which Allah has taken on Himself, and He expects mu'mineen to carry out those responsibilities. If we carry out those responsibilities which Allah has given to us, then we will become entitled to the right of obtaining His help. There are numerous verses on that. Finally, some glimpse of choices made by various actors in Surah Yusuf. This is something very interesting, and this was a late thought, and I thought let's share some of these aspects as well. The first one is brothers of Yusuf made a deliberate choice to ignore the guidance of Wahi and then live to witness the consequences of their choice. And just imagine what happened to them that when they faced Yusuf at the end, and they thought they got away with the crime they committed, but they did not. The Law of Requital caught them. Yusuf created a vision of his aim using the light of Wahi, and chose to follow this path in his life. So this, the choice which Yusuf made, his brothers made a different choice, despite the fact that they lived in the same house, under the same family, and under Hazrat Yaqub, who himself was the messenger of Allah, and he passed Wahi to all of his family. Yaqub passed on the guidance of Wahi to his family and people around him, and he himself chose to follow it within the means and resources he had. Yusuf used his choice and did not sit idle even in the worst of circumstances, including being in the well, being sold as a slave, serving as a slave under Ejaz and his wife. He made his firm choice not to follow the path of hedonistic based desires and stood firm against evil. Imagine at any stage he could have given it up. And of course, if he had given it up, there would have been no Surah Yusuf. He did not give up. And this is a great instruction for us. Never ever give up. And if we have selected this path, we should stay firm with it and also enjoy it. Because there is a contentment, there is a freedom from fear on following this path. Wife of Aziz made her choice to follow her lust and chose to send Yusuf to prison. So everyone is making use of their choices. And that is something very interesting. I'm sure there are more into it, but these are the ones which I picked up. Aziz chose not to stand up to evil and allowed the system to imprison Yusuf. So Aziz was the one who was the husband of this lady. This is how societies decline rapidly. So if we do not stand up to the evil, then of course the decline sets in. And by not promoting maruf, that is good, and by not forbidding munkar, that is evil. So if we don't do that, any society in which these things decline, then the society rapidly goes towards its own destruction and ruin. Yusuf chose to stay in prison until his case becomes investigated fully and impartially. He had a choice to come out quickly, but he preferred to stay over there for a higher value. And this is something which is a great instruction for us. Never ever quickly take decisions. We should look into it and make a choice, informed choice in the light of the Quranic values. Yusuf chose to take high responsibility which he had anticipated and he was prepared for. The king chose Yusuf based on his intellectual acumen, his values, his competence. So king also made a choice. Yusuf is all along making choices, and then the Quran says that the king also made a choice. One brother of Yusuf chose to hide the goblet in the sack of the younger brother. I have omitted some of the other choices as well, which were made by Hazrat Yaqub within his family, but we can figure it out ourselves. Yusuf chose to forgive his brothers and to not take the matter any further. See, again, his choice. He could have punished them. He did not, because he had access to Wahi. And we have access to Wahi, so we should look at these things as we have been guided by the Quran. Allah chose Yusuf for this task as he met the criteria of being Muhsin and Muttaqi. This is something which came to my mind later, that Allah is also making a choice here. And those choices he has clearly defined in the Quran, that what kind of a people he chooses. So we are in a great advantageous position that Allah has already said that these are the kinds of people who get chosen for carrying out his responsibilities. And this is where we need to concentrate and remain focused. Thus Allah fulfilled his promise as explained in the Quran. And finally, we all have chosen this path through our free volition, and we have chosen to stay on this until our physical death. We have chosen to obtain maximum benefit from the Quranic guidance, and we are fully aware of our choice and its consequences. And with this, we come to the end of this presentation, and thank you for sharing it with me.